welcome to Unapologetically You. So, today's guest is Camille Marie. She's a professional photographer and we met at a friend's event. So, I was really intrigued to hear her story about what she overcame, her sabotages, what brings her joy, fulfillment, and what she's chasing at the moment regarding her curiosity. She reveals quite a few things when it comes to her own insecurities, her own vulnerabilities as an entrepreneur, and how she overcame some of those things. So she does delve into a few nuggets of information. So I'm so grateful that she was able to come on this podcast. But before we get started on the main theme, please engage with this podcast. Let us know. Do you agree, disagree? Did you have the same insecurities that Camille and I talk about during the podcast? If you're watching us on YouTube, comment on the video, like the video, please, because then more people can find videos like this on YouTube. And if you're on Spotify, click the follow button. Send us an email if you want to share your own experiences too. And we would appreciate if you can share this podcast if you found it informative and useful. So this podcast would not be possible without the beautiful Cami. So let's delve straight into this podcast about unlocking our joy through creativity with Cami. Hi, Cami. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much for being here and taking time out of your day. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you online.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, you're welcome. And we've got a special guest appearance for anybody who's watching on YouTube. We've got Leela joining us as well. Hi. We've never had a
Hi.
dog on this podcast, so this is a first.
Oh, do you hear that, Lila?
YouTube famous. Okay, so firstly, yeah, how are you? How are things?
I'm good. Yeah, thank you. I've had an interesting morning. I mean, it was not interesting, but it was a bit stressful, and I tried not to let it get to me. And it's realizing also that I am making the stress for myself, like nobody else. Yeah, it's just a very so basically I am creating outfits for a photo shoot that I have upcoming.
Mm-hmm.
Um so- and I decided just to make the outfits for it. And I realized this morning that one of the skirt was too small. So I instead of like having finished one outfit today, like completed,
Mm-hmm.
I had to like take it apart and like put something in it, and it's fine because it obviously because I planned so far early and like early in advance that I will absolutely be on time. But like,
You're a planner. I like that. We can get on even more so than we actually do. So, actually, before you delve into some of your projects, I'm really curious. We had almost like an intense, deep conversation when we were at the retreat, but obviously it couldn't last for very long. It's like, go deep or go home kind of thing. And then I was like, look, we need Cami on this podcast. And I want to know a little bit more about what was your life before you got into photography? What was the process that got you into this profession? Can you have us give us a reveal of what was the process in your thought space?
that's an interesting question because I feel like it's almost like it's still an ongoing process, and it has been since I was born. um, it's very strange because like it runs in my family. Like
Okay.
my grandfather um had a like photography shop in Madagascar, and he was like the first one who brought like postcards to the little town where he lived when my mom was born. So he was like doing all of that, like he was really into photography, and then my mom was into it a little bit, not to the same extent.
Mm.
and and then yeah, and now I'm into it. And basically I when I was in high school, sixth form, um, I had so in France the way it used to work is that you had like three or four big major and then a minor. And so I went and chose literature because the other choices were like science and economics, and that's not where my brain went. And as a minor, I chose art, and I was always quite artistic, like creative. I was drawing, I was creating things. I loved fashion and clothes as well, so I was making like little paper clothes anyway. And I felt like I was always like looking for my medium. And then one day was offered by my mom like a tiny shit camera. Um, no, actually, she bought a new model for her and she gave me her old one,
Oh, nice.
and that felt like a the spark was,
Yeah.
start. So I was like around 15 or 16, and
Mhm.
I felt like I had found my medium. So I was very lucky early on in my life to have, found this, because I
Mhm.
feel like so many artists look for their thing. Um, and yeah, I actually went and studied photography at university. It was a terrible school, do not recommend, but yeah, I kind of studied it. And also, there's a very French thing because my family is French in Madagascar. And in France, you have to study one thing and then do this job for the rest of your life.
No pressure there
And
then. Like this, you're
yeah,
committed, you're all in.
honestly, it's like it's very ingrained in the mentality. So you really had to pick carefully, or you thought you had to pick carefully when you were like 18. And
Yeah.
since I knew I was an artist and wanted to pursue that, then I studied photography. But as you can imagine, it's like a really difficult process. Like it's a highly competitive and difficult to like get into blah blah blah. So obviously I didn't become a photographer straight away. But never stopped trying, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
And then I found, as we discussed at the retreat, I found yoga, which was life changing, and decided to quit my photography dream and pursue being a teacher. And then life happened, and I became a photographer.
Okay, but you
um,
skipped a whole lot of information in that. Like you kind of just don't go from yoga to change your whole life. So talk us through the process of how yoga changed your life. Like what drew you into yoga? Everybody has a story of what drew them in. And then, like what happened in that evolution, in that flowering, in that becoming.
of course. So I hmm, I found yoga because initially it was another way to punish myself. Um, so I had been battling with eating disorders, depression, body dysmorphia, all of that.
Hmm.
And started that year, I had started working out. I was doing like hit workouts at home. And then after 6 months, I was bored of it. I was like, what else can I do? And I started yoga. And it became very transformative, as everyone who practices yoga know how powerful this can be. But it started with the body. It started with like, oh my god, this is so playful. And I really got into like the balances, like unbalances, inversions and things like that, and that helped me change my story, the story that I had about my body. um and and then it basically developed and blossomed into getting deeper into the breath, the mind, and then later on the philosophy, the spirituality. And the way it changed me is I think it made me, it awakened me. It opened me to the world, because like the sad thing when you are struggling with depression and eating disorders is that you think about yourself quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it is exhausting. It is exhausting.
It's like
Like I
constant
don't,
chatter as well, right? You're just talking to yourself constantly, but not in the most healthiest way, in the most derogatory, harsh way. You would never speak to your friends this way, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have any
yeah,
friends left.
actually never. And that is just It's like why? And I think what's sad is that I didn't think I was a compassionate and kind person because of the way, like the way I like the relationship with myself was staining every other relationship that I had
Yeah.
because I was horrible to myself.
Yeah.
Um, and then like through yoga, I was just able to, yeah, just to be open to the world and see, just see the love everywhere, you know. That's very cheesy, but that's really where I'm coming from and where I'm going and where I am. And I really needed that in order for my photography to blossom, my business to blossom. And I also, I mean, I needed like knowledge, like marketing, blah, blah. But I really, yeah, to be grounded in that.
Yeah. So it's so funny that you're basically saying that like, there's a lot of women who go through body dysmorphia, who go through struggles of, they may not necessarily have an eating disorder per se, but it's quite likely to have it, or at least dabble in the symptoms of eating disorders. But particularly it's the mental side of things when we talk about eating disorders and things like that. And it's really, really hard to disassociate that from our body. So what you were doing with yoga is channeling this dysmorphia, this unhealthy image that you have of yourself, into grounding yourself in these practices after, in a sense, like, you still enjoyed those poses, right? They're still difficult poses to get into. So did you end up like going through almost like a darker period during yoga to kind of like make your body do things that it wasn't really ready or capable of doing? Was that something that you thought before you actually came into this awareness and awakening?
Oh, it's a very interesting question. Because I've definitely seen that side of yoga, like being really asana forward.
Mm,
And for those of you who don't know what an asana is, it's a yoga posture. Um, and it can really be another trap itself because you're like, oh, you know, can I practice and can I enjoy yoga if I'm not, on my hands? And the poses, you find them, you lose them, the body changes. I developed a tendonitis as well, because
was that
back
during
when
yoga?
I think it was, yeah, it was probably because of yoga, because I was always on my hands,
Understood.
and that was just repetitive stress. And
Yeah.
I was not, but at the time I was not cross training at all. I was only doing like some form of powerful yoga,
Mm,
uh, asana. And yeah, I had tendonitis. It was really, really painful, and I had this for like 2 years. So that was definitely um a problem. My dark side, I don't think I fell too far into it because I realized many things. I also moved on. Like I don't always do yoga for my physical movement practice, for
yeah.
example, like, because I'm doing so many things now movement wise that yoga can just be yoga. um I did yoga this morning, really nice. And then it can also, it's become such a part of the way I think, that it's just the way you live your life, right? It's the way you interact with people, and try to, yeah, just to exist in harmony.
Yeah.
um Not always easy, but we try. So yeah, I did definitely experience some kind of dark side, and I always reflect on that, on yoga asana. And because I still, I love them. Like, there's no denying it. And when I teach it, I teach a very asana based practice because I think it's fun, and it's the divine play. It's what can you discover about yourself? Like, I didn't think I was capable of like doing handstands and those things, and actually I can. And it was really helpful and transformative in like so many different aspects of my life. So, but there will be one day where I am injured, tired, ill, old, I don't know, and not able to do that. And I will still be a yoga practitioner.
Yeah, and it's really funny. I was going to ask you this a little bit later regarding health and wellness, but really, I think for me, meditation is that habit that I do every day. And you don't necessarily feel the effects of meditation, but when you don't do the practice, you feel the absence of it, right? So it's almost like you don't feel that you're ticking along. It's like hydration, right? You're drinking water, but you don't realize the effect that water has when you stop drinking water and you feel that dehydration, deprivation, fatigue. And so I feel like with meditation, if I don't do it, I do miss it. It's almost like that keystone habit I have. But it's actually saying that I had to rewire my brain, especially lately when I'm learning more about yoga. I had to rewire my brain to think meditation is yoga, breathwork is yoga. Like you don't have to then be in this specific vinyasa flow. You don't need to be in a hot yoga studio to do yoga per se. But I want to kind of go on the back of my keystone habit is meditation and yoga, especially. But what are your keystone habits? You said that you did yoga this morning, but what is a staple in your everyday that's almost like a non-negotiable you have to do? It's a part of your essence, it's a part of your spiritual practice to enhance your mental wellness, your physical wellness, your mind body spirit connection. What are your keystone habits that you end up, leaning on?
So it's important for me to wake up early. That sounds silly, but I feel better when I wake up before 6, preferably 5:30, because it's quiet time. It's you were talking about meditation and the way you like to practice it. Um I don't sit down and meditate, but I it's almost like japa meditation. I do crochet, so that's what I would use in the morning. I wake up, I do that, and that's my like um settle in time. And I also, again, it sounds silly, but my spiritual practice, the way I feel connected with God, is through nature. I live in
Mhm.
London, so uh, so but I find myself being really connected to that when I, especially in the morning, when I snuggle my dog Lila.
Yeah.
um, and we go for a walk very early in the morning, or I also take my skateboard. I would like My connection with her is really helping me through my spiritual practice. It's really anchoring it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, that really does. It's really beautiful the way that you tie in your love of Leela, of your dog, to actually say it's actually helping ground you. It's helping you connect to nature almost.
Yeah, and also because of her, like her story, she's a rescue, and she's had a really, really difficult first few years, and she only has one eye,
Oh,
because she lost the other one was rotting, and the charity who rescued her removed it. And like she went through all of these traumatic things, and yet she's so full of love. She's such a great teacher, because she's like that. She's so resilient and also forgiving. Like she could very much like hate humans, and just like, and yet she's just so loving. So it's really helping me. um and then I also, moving my body in any way is also a non-negotiable.
yeah.
um to feel at home in my body, whether it's in the short term or the long term. I think we were talking about that during the retreat. Like I don't like working out very much, but I do it because it's important for my future self.
Yeah.
Um, so I do work out 3-4 times a week, and then 1 to 3 times a week I either do yoga, climbing, just fun movement rather than um working out, picking up heavy stuff and putting them back down.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I feel like a lot of times we need to go through those phases of what works for our body. What does our body need? Rather than actually having a rigid schedule. Like actually like, having that narrative of even if you're doing yoga, it could just be like for me as a strength and conditioning coach, it could just be mobility. It could just be moving your body in different ways and, dancing. I think people just forget how freeing movement is just generally in your body. And I guess, like, even going out for walks with Leela, having the capacity to actually go, I'm moving my body in a different way today. What does my body need? We sometimes disassociate our connection with our body, but then we're missing the warning signs, right? Going back to your photography, I wanted to ask actually regarding niches. Now, we touched upon this when we had a conversation offline, obviously at the retreat, but I wanted to ask like, everybody has to go through this, especially as a business owner. What's your niche? Who's your
Mm.
target audience? Who's your avatar? And everybody kind of like whittles us down into these boxes. And I know I find it difficult because I like so many different things. And for me, I didn't want to be narrowed down to a specific genre or field. But I feel like what was your journey? What was your interpretation in terms of photography? You can be a wedding photographer, you can be, a person photographer or nature photographer, you can be an astrophotographer. So there are so many different photography niches or like pathways. What made you choose what you're doing and obviously explore some of that to our audience? And what allowed you to make the decision to do what lights you up when it came to photography?
It's interesting. Um, so when I lived in France, I I didn't really know how to make my photography work commercial.
Hmm.
I realized a lot of that boils down to socioeconomical background and all of the stuff that I discovered in London. What I mean is because of my family being who they are, they didn't know what it was to be a branding photographer, how to do your marketing, how to, social media, like whatever, like what you know about work is nurse, construction. If you want to be an artist, then you're a painter. Like there's not like there's so many weird things that you can do and job titles and stuff that I wasn't really aware of it. So in my head, that's also part of why I was struggling to be a photographer, because I was almost expecting people to find me.
Okay.
um and and also I did explore a lot, but I didn't know how to make my photography viable. And I was doing a few exhibitions, particularly the last year before I moved to London. And I had an agent who would sell my pictures. Um, and I always like loved like taking pictures of people. That was like my main thing, but I was experimenting with other things as well.
Hmm.
And then when I moved to London, like I tried to do that, to have an agent and to work like that. But I didn't know where to go. I don't know if that makes sense and if that would resonate with people, but I I literally had no clue. I was a photographer and that's all I knew. But then, there's so many things that you can do. And for example, now up until a few weeks ago, I was only a personal branding photographer.
Hmm.
Who knows what like personal branding is? Like I didn't know what it was until a couple of years ago. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and it's because like I don't even know how to translate it in French, first of all. Um, but it's because like it's just so you have to know, like you have to be in the know. But before that, when I became a teacher, I became like a yoga teacher. I became a yoga photographer. That was the natural transition. And that worked for me for a bit because I loved taking pictures of movement and things like that. and expressions, and also it helped me gain experience in directing people a little bit more. But
Hmm.
now I feel like I would I would introduce myself as a brand photographer and wellness photographer
Yeah.
because yeah, I still work in wellness
Hmm.
um quite a lot, but I also, I'm starting to get into fashion photography as well, hence the making clothes. um, so yeah, I am the niche. What can I say?
I love it. I exactly. You can't put yourself in a box. You are the box. There are so many different facets to it. And I remember us talking actually when we were trying to arrange the podcast timings and dates. You were saying, you're focused on editing. And I remember, you sometimes have to be in that type of zone and kind of get, finish the project, complete it, right? Go through its phases. And a lot of people forget that photography is not just seeing things in different ways, being creative, but actually you need to switch off from that. You can't be creative all the time. You can't be on it. And then there's other areas that, like you were saying, editing can be quite laborious. It can be quite a draining task. So I just wanted to ask, what are the aspects of photography do you find draining, and how do you switch off from like your main profession? Because you've got so many different assets to, what makes you tick and what makes you light up.
What I found draining is the hustle.
Yeah.
um, the hustle, because I actually enjoy editing. Although for the retreat, I had to edit thousands and thousands of pictures, so it did get old after a bit. But I do like the process because you see the picture come to life. And it's, yeah, it's really, it's work that I can do, laying down and snuggling with the dog and listening to a podcast. Like it's quite nice. And it's very introverted work because as a photographer you have to be people forward, right? And I like that binary of my work. But the, having to think of creative ways of marketing yourself, sometimes it's fun, sometimes I enjoy the marketing, but right now I'm in a phase where I just can't be asked. I can't be bothered with the marketing at the moment, and it flows, right? It just fluctuates.
Absolutely. Yeah, we go through stages and seasons.
Exactly. And I think part of why is because at the moment I feel very in my creative flow, which is lovely. I feel very inspired to create and to, feed my inner artist.
Mhm.
But it means that all of the admin, tax returns, and all of that, I'm like, no. No.
Yeah, agree.
So yeah, it's
Agree,
interesting.
agree. Yeah, and I find as well, like I remember speaking to another coach and he said, even if you're doing something you love, there's going to be 10% of it that you have to do, right? Like you said, the administration, or it'll be the taxes, or those tiny bits of marketing where you're just not in the flow. Like I remember even with my YouTube channel, like on Instagram, like you're trying to sell yourself, and I've never been really good at selling myself. I can sell things, I'm very good at doing that, but I can't really promote myself. And like having an agent actually does really support it, because actors have that, right? People have that. And I realize that why don't strength and conditioning coaches have that? Because even though we're really good at what we do, sometimes we're missing the link between how we can promote ourselves without sounding arrogant or condescending, just to go, you need us to do this. And I've never been that type of person. So it's actually, I love hibernating, and I'm just like, I'll just go off social media for a while and just be like, no, I need my introversion time. I need my integration time. And as I said earlier, you go through your own seasons, right? So you need to kind of figure out what that season looks like and how you then can blossom when you're doing your work and doing all these different things. But
Mm,
it's so funny as well, because you said on that answer just then, people have all these ideas. Everything's busy. This world is busy, Sometimes even when you talk about what you do, like, oh, what are you doing? What's next? What's this? And you kind of like almost feel pressured. I don't know if you do, but I certainly do. Sometimes you feel pressured to kind of answer a really good answer just to show you're doing well, even if you're not feeling in that place. You're still selling yourself, right? You're still introducing yourself on what you do and trying to get the word out there. And you can't be honest with everyone. You can't just be like, yeah, you know what? It's a real shit show right now. I have no idea what's coming next. It's only certain people you can say that to. But I feel like a lot of times, like you said earlier, we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Is it the pressure of ourselves that's doing that? Or is it the pressure of the outside noise, like of what's expected of us? How do you overcome that pressure of yourself or block out that outside noise? That's kind of what I'm trying to get at.
I mean, yeah, you're right, and I think it feeds itself. The you received a message, you were conditioned a certain way growing up, so now that voice that you heard all your life is the voice that you speak yourself with.
Mm,
And it's interesting what you said about like you can't be honest with everybody, because that's true. And like the sad reality is, in terms of marketing, when you when you're trying to sell your services, if you say, it's not working, like I don't have any clients at the moment, then people don't people don't want to, like, there's almost like
yeah,
this FOMO element.
yeah,
And like if
absolutely.
when people know that I'm really busy, it's always when I have lots of inquiries. It's great, but it's like, why can't you just like trickle out Jen at the year instead of like everybody in the same 6 months period? But okay.
You think it's a vibration though? It's a vibration to go, I am busy. And actually you're not necessarily attracting clients, but the clients are then coming to you at that point.
Yeah, maybe it's almost like that thing that people said when you're in a relationship and other
Yeah.
people sense you're in a relationship, so they fancy you more, and you're like, could you have fancied me when I was single? So maybe, yeah, maybe it's a vibration thing. It's interesting, but to answer your question about how to, that's not what you said, but how to ground yourself away from that little voice.
Yeah.
I don't, to be honest, because I do struggle being completely honest, like when things are not going well, and that's in all aspects of my life, to be fair. Like I just struggle with vulnerability in general. But I also, I think it's like the part of me that has something to prove, because my family, they're, bless them, they just like do what they know, right? But they, like, being a photographer was not what they were picturing for me.
Mm,
Um, and they don't really understand it. And I was told to stop by a few family members before I moved to the UK, because like that was just like not working and time to grow up and whatever. And now that it is working, now that I am a full-time photographer, I almost feel like I need to be like, ha, I told you so. But it's not healthy, is it? So um, yeah, so it is. I mean, I I'm honest with my friends. I think that's important. Even if I can't be really honest with everybody that is in my network when sales are really low, um, I at least have a few really good friends that I feel safe with, and that's that might just be enough to tell the people you're safe with that, hey, I'm scared. um, be, because it's also important to like regulate yourself on those things, isn't it? Before regulating other people, because I have a tendency to be really anxious about work, as in like, do I have enough inquiries? I'm not making enough money. And then I look at like because I track everything, and I look at everything I track, and I'm like, it's obviously fine. But, yeah, again, it's like growing up stuff, isn't it? I don't know if you find that, but like running a business just triggers all of your childhood unhealed things.
I don't know what it is. I remember saying in another podcast, I don't know if I said it on this podcast that I'm hosting, but I remember saying I it's not often I cry in public. And when I was my most vulnerable with one of my best friends, I just started crying on the sofa. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, am I supposed to be in this coaching profession? I don't have a long-term goal. Like, I'm not getting a job that I wanted. I'm applying for different things and it's just not happening. And I'm just like, well, just why? Why? What is the point of this? And as soon as I had that release, as you said, you've got a close friend, you've got a trusted member of your circle that you're sharing this with, and you're not asking for solutions, you're not asking for them to answer this. It's just to be present. It's just to kind of hold space for you at that time. And I love that I didn't need to verbalize that because I don't even know what was going on because obviously I was spiraling. And then a few years later, it wasn't even that long after, I ended up, landing the role with Mercedes and more things just came along. And for me, I just thought to myself, you say it's so accurate. It really does reveal our inner wounds, our inner triggers. Like it's almost like with society's pressure of, oh, should you really be doing that? Should like even for family, like why don't you just get a full-time job and just get the money coming in and you're safe, right? With entrepreneurs, you're not safe. Like you constantly have to battle with other people's opinions of their insecurities because that's going to project on you, and then you're still dealing with your own projections of insecurities and going, is this right? I don't know. But you kind of then go to these flow movements, these fluid spiritual, I'm going to call it spiritually aligned, enlightened moments when
Mhm.
you do something you love. And like to have that fraction when you're doing something you love, it kind of allows for all the noise to just die down. It allows the admin side of things just to go, it's fine, you're okay, because you get to experience that actually not that many people in the world get to experience, or have the capacity or the courage to explore those desires and feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're an entrepreneur, you have to be okay with knowing that you are not safe indeed. But
Yeah,
like the thing is with a full-time job, you are not safe either, but it's
that's so
just
true. That is so true. Absolutely. I'm so glad you pointed that out.
it's just like you are even less in control because
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, like once you have things figured out a little bit, you're like, well, to get more money, I can always do more like this, or do things differently. Like you are in control much more than you think. And
Mm.
there is a lot of you that needs to be reparented. um
That's a good word. It's a good terminology.
because I run this mentoring thing on the side as well with photography, um and with my photo shoot I also offer brand strategy. And there's a lot of that, like noticing people's like voices and doubts and stuff, and then asking them like who is talking right now, like because I'm not sure it's you. Sounds like your mum.
Oh, yeah, that's so true. Oh my gosh. You're like a psychotherapist all in one as well as mentoring. It's so true.
It's just because like I've recognized those things because it's at least what I've got. Like I've got a very anxious mum, and my mum was a nurse before she retired, and she was always like terrified um of me just failing my life basically. And it is that like immigrant mentality of having to prove yourself,
Mm,
um and like working harder than other people, and be sure that the money's safe, be sure that you have income every month.
yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what I'm battling with, so I can quite often recognize it in other people. uh,
Yeah.
you know it's like, okay, whose voice is that? Whose worry is that? And
Absolutely, because we've got our own worries. And it's actually, I feel like with entrepreneurship, even if you're a small business or whatever you are, you're always going to have that aspect of, I just got to be okay with not knowing. I've got to be okay in the uncertainty. And when you're riding the wave of the high, just acknowledge that you don't need to be that high. You can bring yourself back down to that neutral, normal, and then be okay if you're either riding high or low, right? And I feel like for me, spirituality does that. It almost like lowers the parameters. I don't need to go like in a roller coaster ride. I can actually go, well, how can I come back to that central aspect of who I am? Like sometimes it's going to be exciting and sometimes like, how can I find the joy in the mundane? I think that's where like, how can I find the joy in, speaking to amazing, incredible people like yourself? How can I find joy in like, sipping my cup of coffee or hoovering the house. And I feel like not everybody is able to do that because it's like, I have to do this, I have to do this, I have to do this. And as you said earlier, it's that busyness that people are constantly chasing. And as entrepreneurs, we're kind of doing that and also trying to appreciate what we've got because we need to look at the next project and the next income and what else is coming up, right? So it's a constant battle with ourselves, I feel. I don't think I've been, working for myself since 2009. I don't think this has changed.
how old are you?
I'm 40 now.
Oh, you look younger.
Oh, thank you.
So I was like 2009. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's been a
Um,
while, but I feel like yeah, for me, I'm okay with not knowing. And
mm,
like being open, and this is where I'm like leaning on spirituality of going, be open to all of the opportunities and possibilities that are arising. Like even if you are thinking, well, you know what, I would really like a really healthy contract right now, even if it's short term, but it's paying a lot of money. What do I need to do to receive that? Because a lot of times we forget to actually first ask for what we want, even if it is to the grander universe and source or God, whatever you believe in, or we're actually just saying, speaking it to others because we don't know that they might know somebody else who is looking for this connections, right? It's almost like saying you're not marketing yourself, but you're not exactly, you're just sharing what you really want out into the universe. And then the universe just makes it happen.
it's oh God. There's two things that you said that I really resonate with and practice. Is you said it's important to find the joy in the mundane, and that's really something I've focused on the last couple of years because it's sort of part of yoga to find that contentment, and I feel like finding the joy in the mundane is creating contentment, and helping us be in the moment and rewiring our brains because yeah, I love that. I also love finding joy in drinking my coffee for sure. But speaking, and also you said speaking out things to the universe or to other people, so important. Like I used to be so in my own head, and actually just telling people you're doing this, first of all, it sit with yourself. You're like, okay, this is what I'm doing. But also, as you said, like so many things come from it.
Mm.
So many things. And I mean, that's just a very silly example, but I, I had a client couple of months ago who was a skateboarder. She's a longboard dancer person, and I've done skateboard when I was 14, and then never again. And I've been thinking of doing it again for quite a few years now. And after meeting her, I was like, oh, that's it. And I posted something on Instagram. I just said, like, as a joke, I posted a poll of like, hey, should I relive my teenage years and just buy myself a longboard? And then a friend of mine replied, and she said like, oh my god, I started skating as well. We should do surf skate. And she said like we should go skating together. And then I ended up getting a skateboard from her because she bought one that she didn't like. And then that's it. And I have a friend to skate with and a longboard.
That's
Just to
so good.
yeah. And I also I'm going for a shoot in Ibiza in a couple of weeks. I just asked for a recommendation online, and I had two people who came to me and were like, "Hey, can you photograph me, like Lisa?" Like, it's just so silly. We just don't speak to each other enough.
That's so true. Yeah, that's what I mean. I like speak your intentions and you never know who might just kind of like step in and go, well, wait a second, I've been thinking this. And it kind of like it
Mm,
triggers a domino effect, doesn't
yeah.
it? Not only are you able to communicate with them, but they're kind of fulfilling what they want at the same time.
It does. And I have a marketing person in my network. She's run an agency now. Anyway, she ran a masterclass a few weeks ago, and it was around attracting clients, basically
Mhm.
attracting clients. And I attended a masterclass, and she was like, basically, like, just go out and go to yoga class, go to an event, just go and meet people and talk to people in person.
Yeah.
um, and then I was like, yeah, I mean, that's really what I'm craving right now, I think. Like, just having a chat with people, meeting people in person, and see what comes of it. And not obviously not meeting people with the intention of like being a work,
Absolutely. Yeah.
but just, yeah, I've been going to more things recently just because I'm like, it's, it was nice being online and marketing online for a bit, but now I'm like, I just want to open up.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like we go through those different phases, right? During the winter, we tend to hibernate and we kind of all become all introverted and kind of like a little bit comfort blankety type of thing. And then as soon as spring hits, it's almost like we're blossoming ourselves, especially as entrepreneurs. There's more events going on, there's more information out there, there's more networking opportunities. And as you said, like I've never thought of networking in terms of what can you do for me? I always look at what can I do for you? Like, how can I help your life a little bit easier if I can support your wellness? And I think that that's where I ended up doing the tiers. So I ended up going, well, if you want free stuff, go to my YouTube channel because there's
Yeah.
so much good stuff, but free for those of people who just don't want to pay for it, but you're still helping the algorithm and people you're still helping yourself at the end of the day. You've got a really good quality coach showing you what to do as you're in the comfort of your own home. And then other people don't get on with that. They need those group sessions, they need online coaching and things like that. So that's that next level of upgrade. And even when I'm coaching young Carters, like there's so many different aspects to my bow that I'm able to go, okay, so where how can I help? Do you want to listen to the podcast? Like, do you want more information about strength and conditioning? Do you want to like take up my book? Do you need that support in that way? And it's actually nice to go, I'm able to kind of do all of these things and they're all coming together in some crazy, paradigm spider chart going, yeah, I've got this for you. I've got that for you. I've got this and that.
That makes sense. Yeah. You said something earlier um about a goal, about like not knowing, like when you cry to your friend and you were like, what is my goal? Like, where am I going? And
Yeah.
like, and we don't have to know where we're going, right? It's nice to have a bit of intentionality in your life. Um, but like it does end up making sense eventually at some point. Like, you've got your podcast, you've got your book, you've got YouTube, you've got people that you chat with, and like, you don't have to have everything figured out like right now in order to serve people the best you
Yeah.
can. Because you're there serving, and that takes whatever shape, whatever form.
Yeah, I love that you said that because actually it brings me back to when people like, what's your purpose? What's your mission? What's your brand? And you're like, you're so kind of overwhelmed with these statements and these, niches. But actually, you can just go, I was having a conversation with another coach, and we both agreed last year, we're like, we just don't know. We just don't know where we're going to go. And we have to be okay with not knowing. And eventually, the puzzle pieces will all start to we're going to be able to see the bigger picture on it. We're going to just go, well, let me just deal with this puzzle piece today. Let me just deal with this area. And it will eventually be a lot clearer. But right now, we just need to go with, I love that you said intentionality. Like right now, I'll ask myself questions of, What do I need to feel today? Who can I be in service to today? And those little things could just be your purpose today. We don't need to think of this all encompassing spiritual journey that we have to have a mission and a purpose in life. It's like we don't need to put that much pressure on ourselves. We can just be purposeful. Like smiling to a stranger could be your purpose today. You know,
Mhm.
having a conversation with somebody incredible could have been your purpose today. And that carries through days and months and years because we know studies have shown that certain conversations can actually stay with you for a very long time.
Very true. And if you get a dog, your purpose will be every day to serve that little being.
That's so true. They did something good in their previous life, even though they had, some turmoil and trauma, like to find you and have this connection. Like you said, you're both serving each other, aren't you?
I think that's one of the first thought that pops after like maybe a month of having her. That I think I did something good in a previous life because I met
Oh,
her in this life, and like that's literally the best thing. I know I speak a
yeah.
lot about my dog, but like she changed me, and I think like being in um I don't know, co-ownership with her, owning each other. It's just such a blessing. I
Yeah,
think
absolutely. It's just such a brilliant way of seeing it. Rather than us adopting a dog, it's actually saying, what have we done to deserve, just even our friends, our family? Because I don't know about you, but I remember just even speaking to my dad, and my dad, no word of a lie, I didn't even think he was that spiritual, but he actually said, you chose us. And I
oh,
know there's that going around where it's like, no, we've been purposeful with where we're supposed to be in this life. Our soul has come to connect with all these different individuals, and it could be a short time, it could be a long time, or it could be for the rest of our lives. And the fact that we've chosen our family to teach us what we really, really do need to learn. And pets do that too, right? They teach us so much.
oh, I love that. Gonna journal all this later.
Yeah. I love the reflection. I do journal a lot. And actually, one of my last questions I wanted to ask today is, what is your philosophy regarding where you're heading? But I kind of want to twist that and say, instead of asking that question, I want to ask, what is your intention for today and the rest of this week? Like, what have you thought about your intention for this week? Are you able to share it with us?
So I have an intention for the year,
Oh,
and
okay.
that has been what I do every week, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, my intention for the year was to follow my curiosity.
Mhm.
Um, because I've had like lots of different pangs of things, and I'm like, just follow it,
Mm.
see what happens. So I've been doing that a lot, and that has led me to expanding my hobby array, let's say. Um, cause yeah, that's I think that's also why I feel really creative at the moment. It's because I've expanded my skills.
Yeah.
So my intention this week, I mean, they're very pragmatic, but I have a big brand shoot on Saturday. So, and I'm teaching a lot more than usual, over the course of 3 days. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I'm going to teach a lot. And I have this brand shoot, so I really need to find my introvert time leading
Mhm.
up to that. So I am working on my outfit. I'm sewing a lot this week. I'm hoping to have finished stuff by the end of the week. And again, like my mind is going faster than my body because I'm like, oh, I need to this, and this.
Yeah.
Which is a bit exhausting sometimes, but that's fine. But like during the retreat, you were at the candle making workshop, but then Jordan was leading natural dye,
Mm.
and that's something before meeting Jordan. That's something that I wanted to experiment with my best friend,
Yeah.
and we've done it this weekend, like the past weekend,
Yeah.
and that was so fun. and she signed. God, she signed us up to a craft thingy like market mid July. So she signed us up for that, and I was like, okay. She told me like last week because basically in order to do the natural dye thing, she had to borrow some clothes from a shop. She's connected with the vintage reseller in her neighborhood. Anyway, those people asked her like, "Hey, we want to promote your brand," and she was like, "What brand?" So we created a brand.
No way.
um, which follow your curiosity, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And mind you, I started sewing in April.
Yeah.
So I'm very much a beginner. So we're gonna sell some like naturally dyed stuff, design that I'm gonna make.
Yeah.
That's what I want to start making this
Mhm.
week if I have the time. Let's see. And then also gathering many avocados in order to dye clothes.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Fun,
So
fun.
there's loads of avocado on toast for you then for these next few days, weeks.
Here I see avocado on toast. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Cami, for sharing your time, your energy, and being vulnerable with us. This podcast is all about being unapologetically ourselves, and the way that we can do that, be open and honest with ourselves, especially through different phases of our journey. And thank you, Leela, for making an appearance on our podcast too. Such an adorable dog. But yeah, is there anything else? I normally don't ask this, but is there anything else that you wanted to talk about before we let you go? Is there something that you were like, I really did want to talk about this on the podcast?
No, but I think I because I want to interview you now,
Oh,
but I don't
okay.
have a podcast, so I need to. And I've been wanting to create a podcast actually for like a year or two now, so I
Okay.
have to do it so I
Yeah.
can interview you.
Amazing. I'm happy to do that. This is a
Oh,
lot of people have actually asked me to be on their podcast recently. And yeah, I would love to be a part of your podcast, and hopefully I can bring some purpose and intent to what you're sharing. What is the podcast about? Have you decided?
I so I wanted it to be a safe space for holistic entrepreneurs, basically for
Mm.
like people like you. Just a soft place to land and to feel validated, relatable, maybe some tips, like just a bit similar to this, to be honest. Just
I
like
love it.
yeah.
I love it. And the best conversations happen just sporadically anyway, right? I had a few questions in mind, but we kind of veered off. And I didn't really actually chat to you more offline because I was like, we need to hit record. Like, this is good. Because sometimes we miss bits. And sometimes me and Kelly do this a lot. Kelly couldn't make it today, but we do this a lot where we're just like, oh, that should have been in the podcast. That was gold. But thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing all of your expertise. And for those of you who are interested in connecting with Cami, please check out the description box. I will link her pages, the way you can connect with her, and especially if you're looking for an incredible photographer, this is somebody that you can obviously reach out to. So thank you, Cami, and thank you, Leela, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
I'll see you soon. Hi, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening here today. If you found this podcast useful, comment below, share it with your friends and family. And we'd love for you to be a part of our community, especially if you're watching us on YouTube. Click the like button or subscribe if you haven't already, and the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and we will see you on the next one. Bye.